find is if you vary how much they hear and what they hear throughout their lives, they vary in what they do. So this is all that they hear during the juvenile lifespan. So this is all their development time, and what you find out, depending on what they hear, they change how they develop. So I'm not really going to go into huge detail here, but there's quite a lot of variation. It's based simply on what they hear and what they think their competitive environment is going to be like. So this doesn't affect how they develop, but it also affects how they behave as adults. So here, what I'll just talk to you really quickly is just how much they call as adults, and down here is their age. So it's just how much you're expecting, how much effort you put to calling throughout your lifespan. And what you find is it kind of varies. It varies on when they reach their peak and how much they call after they reach their peak. So not only are individuals changing how they develop, or males how they develop in response to what they hear, they also change how they behave as adults. And females kind of do very similar kinds of things. They change how much they invest in eggs as a response to what they hear. So again, it's not important. The treatments here is just, there's quite a lot of variation. So this is what interests me. How is a social environment signaling this kind of information? How are individuals choosing what to do in response to this information? And even though I use these animals, I've always kind of wondered how it affects these animals. But it's a little bit more difficult than these guys because you can't put them in little boxes, not ethically speaking anyway. People tend to like that. But I'm also quite interested in understanding how our evolved bodies kind of respond to the rapid changes in technology that we have. The technology that we have nowadays is actually changing how we interact with people and our perception of the social environment, especially mobile phones. We've all got one and we all interact with one another with that. But I'll give you two quick little examples of why I think mobile phones and video games specifically are quite interesting. So here's a little study that came in Evolution in Human Behavior, and what they looked at was the role of instant messages and talking on the phone and so on. And I'll get into a little more detail. But what they did is they took a few young ladies in high school and they gave them a very difficult history test. So difficult, in fact, that even professors couldn't actually answer most of the questions. So the whole goal here was, unfortunately for these young ladies, was to stress them out. Of course, to do that, what they did is they gave them a desk like that, and they sat 5 people in front of them to watch them do this test. So quite a stressful situation, as you can imagine. And what they did is, after that test, they allowed them to either talk to their mom personally, talk to them on their phone, or text them. Before they did it, of course, just before the test, and then after the test, they took corticosteroid levels. So just want to see the stress levels before and after. And essentially what you find is, if they have full contact and verbal contact with their moms, their stress levels go back to essentially baseline levels. So talking to mom really kind of helps the situation out and kind of reduces the stress. This is what happens if you have no contact with mom. You're still quite stressed, but if you only have textual contact with mom, you're much more stressed. And that's a quite interesting thing. And this kind of shows in some way that technology is kind of circumventing biology. There's a disconnect between what we're doing and what effect that's having on our body. We can talk about it later. But this is something else everybody's been doing in Austin quite a lot. Everybody does it at least 3 times a day, eating food, usually with folks. We love taking pictures of our foods. I don't know why, but we love doing it. There's an interesting study where they sat down a bunch of people to eat some food, and what they did before they did that, the one group actually had the exact same ritual before they ate. They did the exact same thing every time, put the forks on, whatever it was exactly the same every time they ate. This other group just had random gestures as controls. And then they said how much, before they ate, they asked them, how much do you anticipate eating your food? How much do you anticipate eating your food? And what they found is those individuals with rituals actually anticipated enjoying their food much, much more. So they were waiting for it, and they were much happier when it came. Now, it's important, I think, to say that these were carrots that people were given, not these delicious carrots with a little bit of rosemary and lemons and cheese and graze. It's delicious. They're actually carrots out of a bag. So they actually literally, but didn't even peel them. And still, this ritual had an effect. Now, this is important because a lot of people show rituals when they eat food. And that ritual is usually associated with taking photographs of their food. Right? So this Instagramming that people do with their food is a kind of a ritual, so it may be enhancing our biology and our enjoyment of the food that we kind of eat. So this is the kind of way that technology kind of interacts in a positive kind of way. So, these are the guys I work on all together, and I want to know, can we understand a little bit more about human behavior using things like this? So the interesting thing about video games is they're everywhere and everyone can play them, and they can be as serious as you want or as casual as you kind of want. And I really want to know, by using these things, can we really understand what's going on and why we behave the way that we do? So we did a quick little study with these guys, and we asked folks online, what video games are you playing right now? And then we kind of rated them on the amount of violence that they actually had within the games. And then we asked them a bunch of questions about themselves, their intelligence, using SAT questions, conflict, how much they argue with their partners. Thankfully, a lot of people didn't do that very much at all. Dominance, how sexually open individuals are, and their mate value, how much they perceive themselves as a high-quality mate. So none of this was of any interest. Well, it was of a lot of interest, but nothing was significant, so I'm going to focus on these two things right down here. And what we found here, so these are the individuals, how exposed they are to violence, and this is the distribution of males and how many violent video games they play and how much time they spend playing violent video games. So women, surprisingly and thankfully, were very, very similar. So there is a lot less differences than we kind of perceive in society. So there are more similarities in what men and women like playing than there are differences. So this is how interested an individual is in sex and their exposure to violent video games. And what we found is that men were more sexually interested in sex, or more interested in sex, the more violent video games they played. So there was a correlation between the two, but not the same causation in this. So with women, of course, same kind of trend, or same relationship, which is really, really nice. So women who are playing violent video games are behaving very much like men and are very interested in sex as well. So you think initially, right away, that guys who are playing violent video games must love this, right? Playing violent video games with other women who are interested in very similar kinds of things. So we can look at that question with video games. So what we did with Jeff here is we used Halo 3, which is an older game and older data, but done during its peak. Halo 3 is quite interesting, or Halo in general, first-person shooters in general are quite interesting because they're extremely competitive and violent, and they're played by both men and women. Of course, with video games, which is really interesting, is the differences between men and women, or the biological differences don't matter whatsoever. It's just how quickly you can move your fingers, so size and weight and all the traits that are normally associated with competitive success don't matter, which is great. So what you can see, or what you can take a look is how many positive and negative comments men and women get online when they play these sorts of games. And when men and women play online, they both get approximately the same number of positive comments, but women get many more negative comments. Now this is a kind of an interesting thing, and this is usually typical of male-biased environments, not just in video games, but in a lot of other male-biased environments that women encounter. Again, with video games, you can start looking at who these individuals kind of are. And what we find here is, if we use player skill level, and we say how many positive comments does a man make to another man, based on their skill, it doesn't vary very much for positive comments. And the lower skilled males are a little bit meaner, but not really, kind of like sore losers, really, it's not too bad. But with women, of course, it's very different. It's these lower skilled males that are actually significantly less positive and significantly more negative. Okay, so the guys who are giving women a hard time online are the guys who are of lower skill. They have a very difficult time in losing to women because they're already kind of on the bottom of the totem pole. And losing to another woman, of course, or the perception of losing to another woman, of course, makes them feel that they belong even lower in the totem pole, so they try to save face in some kind of way by being more aggressive towards women. So the nice kind of thing is, if you look at level 30, ladies, these are the guys that you don't want to mate with. But we've got a nice little switch here. These are the guys you do want to mate with. So next time you're kind of on a date, the dude starts talking about his video game addiction. What you want to say is, ooh, what level are you? Because that really can kind of help you decide whether or not you're possibly be a good mate or not. Let's get back to this data for a second, which I think is quite interesting. And we're going to talk about the mate value stuff right here, just really quickly. And again, we're going to have this exposure to violence really quick, and then this is your perception of how the quality of a mate you are. Your likelihood of attracting a high-quality mate and what you think other people perceive you as. This is men. men essentially think they are always very good. It doesn't matter what. This is a trend in a lot of different studies in psychology. We find the same kind of thing. Women, and this is a really, really cool thing to me. So the more violent video games women play, they perceive themselves as a higher quality mate. So the question is here, what's going on here? Why are these women actually perceiving themselves as higher quality mates? Simply just because they play more violent video games. And here's the reason that I think it is. So generally in society, women have to fight a little bit more fight harder for equality. So women generally get paid less, women have different roles in movies. In society, men and women, unfortunately, that gender equality is not there quite yet. So, but with violent video games, when you're online, it doesn't really matter who you are online, it's just how good you are. So it's almost as if it's a great equalizer in a kind of a way. So these differences between men and women don't matter. So when you play against another man and you kick his ass, you kind of get a better perception of yourself. And this kind of gives you a true representation of how good you are in society. So this is just a correlation. We're still kind of looking at this and we're still running experiments to see if this kind of holds true. Very quickly for the last 30 kind of seconds, I want to tell you, so research is wonderful. I really like video games for research because it kind of exposes these kinds of things to us, but I also think they're really interesting in learning. So one of the things that I've kind of started recently, and they're good in learning because I think it allows players to test the system and play around a little bit with it to understand how a system kind of functions. So this is why I've started a small little company recently, and I have a table out there, and we make games to teach about evolutionary biology and biology in general. We have 12 games, which we kind of consider a little bit of a toolbox to help people learn all these different theoretical concepts that are usually very difficult to teach. This is one of them. I won't show it to you now. There's the little augmented reality crabs that kind of behave in kind of fun ways. And you're welcome to see a video. I won't show it because there's not much time. But students seem to really enjoy them. And when you look at these little augmented reality tags, things come to life on screen, and you can actually perform different experiments. And students can actually learn about science in a really kind of a fun and interactive way. And they really like it, and it helps them understand the topics that they're learning. And I will leave it at that.